Hello and welcome to ADHD Mums. In this podcast, we tackle the tough, often unspoken realities of motherhood, neurodiversity, and mental health. Okay, so I asked the ADHD Mums community how their New Year's goals actually went last year. And the answers, look, I felt them in my bones. I couldn't wait to read them, if I'm honest. And I was sitting on the couch scrolling through hundreds of responses. And it felt like every confession felt like someone whispering, please tell me I'm not the only one who didn't become a whole new person this year. And honestly, none of us did, not one. Here is what you told me. The first came in hot. He said, I said I'd get organised, and I spent 12 months reorganising the same drawer. She said she bought tubs, labels, all of it, but did she get organised? No. Another mum said, I promised I'd yell less, but then within a month, school happened and I started doing it again. A missing shoe, a child crying, and I yelled the majority of the days. Someone else said, I swore that I would stop doom scrolling, but I actually only got worse. Now I doom scroll at midnight as well. However, she also said she's very good at trivia. So really, maybe goal achieved. Health and fitness goals are my personal favourite because I always fail at these as well. I had someone write in who said that she swore she would do meal planning, and that was actually the only goal she set herself. But then she did do meal planning in a way because they ate toast for 6 months. And this wasn't intentionally. She just forgot to meal plan and then everyone else ate toast for the full 6 months. Another confession I loved was there was a lot of people that wrote in about resting more. However, 100% of mums said they actually did not do any rest at all. A lot of people talked about budgeting, but then they kept losing drink bottles, emergency purchases, not forgetting to cancel subscriptions, and basically none of that happened. There's always a subsection of people that say they will print their family photos. Most people said they didn't even get their photos off their phone or delete the duplicates. I mean, same. Really, there can't be that many kids that actually look at photos in hard copy these days. And of course, a big shout out to all the mums who overcommit. There was so many entries of people saying, I said I'd stop overcommitting and then I volunteered for 3 things because I went to the committee meeting and the silence felt awkward and so I said I'd do it. There was a lot of regret in those confessions and also zero learning. A lot of mums talked about getting diagnosed, getting their own ADHD diagnosis moving, then of course did not do that. If that's you, please prioritise your ADHD diagnosis this year. There was a few mums that talked about making a commitment to run each day, and most of them then mentioned that they were pacing in stress circles rather than running. But there was also a lot of steps, so really maybe goal achieved. And there's also the declutter mums, people that talk about decluttering, really want to declutter, but then struggle to actually do it. However, there was also some really deep confessions that rolled in. There was a lot of mums that talked about finally getting fit, but then they didn't even buy their gym membership. They knew that they were absolutely not going to do it. There was a couple of mums that talked about trying a new hobby like dancing, but then spending the entire year looking at the timetable, trying to figure out how to make it work, and then never actually made it work, but really just like looked at the videos. I've got a personal one to share. I actually created a Facebook group for local mums in my area because I wanted to try and meet more local mums. I made the group, got the people involved, and then I made the event and I cancelled every single dinner that I made. And some of them I canceled on the day. How terrible. That is actually a regret of mine. I wish I had have pushed through that and gone to some of the dinners in the local areas that I made and created. And I'm sure that no one in that group will take me seriously if I try and make more events this year. There was also a couple of really heavy confessions around people wanting to commit to being a better partner, but then feeling overstimulated and exhausted. A few women talked about wanting to connect more with their partner, but then being scared that they'd have to get intimate with their partner and they didn't have the energy. So then they thought, no, best not do that. There was a couple of really good lighthearted ones which said, I really committed to doing better with school admin, but then I didn't open a newsletter. Or I said I'd spend more time outside, but then I didn't go outside. But then there was ones that weren't really funny. They were more tender. And I really felt for them because they're the parts of us that we don't say out loud because it feels like failure. But they didn't read like failure to me at all. They read like women doing their best inside lives that they just don't have the capacity to fulfill all of the things that they need to do. More around the reflection of just sheer load that a lot of us are under. And if anyone has ever said to you, I don't know how you do it in regards to your whole life, that's probably the point of this episode, because just living in your body week to week might feel like enough. You may not feel that you have the capacity to goal set and hold yourself accountable, to stack on top of a 7-week school holiday break to feel bad about that you're not setting goals, achieving them, or you're reflecting on last year goals that you didn't do. I don't think we failed at the goals that I read. I feel like we lived a year that was heavier than the plans that we made for it. A lot of the times I make plans thinking that I am best case Jane, full capacity Jane, and when I get to the reality of it, I don't have that much energy. And that, I think, is the whole story. If any of this sounds like your year, then you're not behind, you're not broken, you're not someone who can't get it together. You're trying, but you're also carrying a life that might be asking more of you than anyone else is seeing. Those people that start the year, new me, new year, all of that, they have capacity for change and to be accountable. So we're not doing it wrong necessarily, but we are doing it humanly. I actually think I got worse in most areas than improved. The baseline of last year, and I thought I was going to make some improvements, I've definitely gone down. But that's not failure. I don't see it that way. I see it as I didn't know when I made those goals what that year would be like. And I was overloaded the whole year. So I didn't become a new person this year. I stayed as I was. And if that was you, that was enough. Because here is the part that no one talks about. We were at capacity in November. I was at capacity in October. And when we set goals from inside bodies that are cooked, emotionally, mentally, physically cooked, done. And Christmas has just happened. The overstimulation, decision-making, masking, the pressure, the carry everything load. Our brains are not in let's reinvent ourselves mode. They're in please let me lay down mode. That's where I'm at. And that's where I think a lot of ADHD mums were at this year when they set their goals. So to set a goal, your brain actually needs to have certain elements in place to actually set the goal and achieve it. You need to have, number one, long-term planning, which is tricky when you're burnt out. You need to have delayed reward tolerance. So you need to be okay with not getting the reward later. So for example, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to eat well, but I'm probably not going to lose weight for like a month. ADHD makes this feel hard because we like to get things straight away and get that reward quick, fast, and early. You also need to be able to imagine your future self, which I find tricky because I always imagine how great I'm going to be and how I'd have all this capacity and I'd be the best version of myself, which never happens. You also need to have consistent decision making. Now, that's tricky because we have fluctuating capacity and our executive function is always kind of here and there. So if you're underfueled and overloaded and overstimulated and you're running on scraps of dopamine in December, this is not a goal-setting state for you. This is a keep everybody alive and try not to cry state. This isn't a great place to build a 12-month plan. You might be looking at the moment for relief right now rather than making long-term goals and holding yourself accountable because your inner critic is going to go hard. If you make New Year's resolutions from a fantasy version of yourself, that's how I like to do it. One who's slept, who's got childcare, silence, capacity, the best version of themselves. When January shows up and introduces you to your actual life and you've got your goals and you're wondering why you're not doing them, please don't wonder why that is and berate yourself for not trying harder because the goals aren't failing because you're inconsistent. They fail because the bandwidth that you hope that you would have is not the bandwidth that you actually have. Future Jane doesn't really exist. I've had to come to peace with that. Future Jane that's going to do all of those goals, when I get to future, that Jane is still the Jane that I am now. So the goals aren't wrong. The fact that you made them isn't wrong, but they were written from a body running on empty, probably forecasting best case scenario. So you're not failing at goal setting. You're not failing at New Year, but your goals might not be matching reality. So you're not lacking discipline. You might be lacking capacity though. So if this was you, say to yourself and say it with me. So my body was not in a state that could support change and that's okay. So what should we do this New Year's then? You're probably thinking, is Jane saying not to even bother setting goals? Well, let's look at something that actually works. We are not looking for a full spiritual, emotional, and physical reinvention. It might be what would make my life 10% kinder for the next 7 days. Now, ADHD motivation responds to short timelines, small stakes, immediate wins, less friction, less noise, and making it easy and getting momentum. So it might be to begin with taking one thing off your plate, shortening a routine. It might be letting good enough be good enough and save yourself 2 hours and sit down. Depends what you're actually working on, but I would go strip it right back to small, sustainable, doable, and prove to yourself that you can do it in a small way. Because next year's goals are going to fit you better when you have some element of momentum and when you're in a space that you can actually sit and think about it and have capacity. So it's not that setting goals is bad, but think about whether you're actually in a position that you can do that effectively. If you're not, and I wouldn't imagine many ADHD mums between December and January have capacity to do that, I would delay. I'm going to delay. I'm going to do my goal setting in February when the kids go back to school. But also for the moment, I am going to try and do small, doable, quick wins where I can, which are a step in the direction that I'm attempting to go. So let's strip it right back and keep it small. If you'd like to share in the Facebook group, please jump in and share in a post. If you'd like to send in a listener question, a confession box, please send them in, send me a review, or share this episode with a friend if it's resonated for you. Thank you so much for listening, and let's do it different this Christmas and New Year's. Quick announcement. Did you know that we have an ADHD Mums shop filled with resources designed just for you? These resources are packed with answers to the most frequently asked questions I get sent in via email. Everything from understanding ADHD and autism to practical tips for daily life. There's also a free assessment tool. If you're wondering about ADHD or autism for yourself or your little one, don't forget to check out the free assessment tool under free resources section on my website, adhdmums.com.au.